He landed in a forbidden zone, where every alien woman feared the return of a man. The crash landing. The emergency klaxons screamed through the cramped cockpit of the survey vessel. Meridian as Commander Rylan Voss fought desperately with the controls. Warning lights bathed his weathered face in angry red as the ship bucked and twisted through Nexara's turbulent atmosphere. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered through gritted teeth, his knuckles white against the flight stick. The planet's dual suns created massive thermal updrafts that tossed his small craft like a leaf in a hurricane. What should have been a routine mineral survey had turned into a nightmare when an unexpected solar flare fried half his navigation systems. The crystalline forests of Nexara rushed up to meet him, their translucent trees catching the amber and violet light of the twin stars. Each tree stood like a frozen flame reaching toward the heavens with branches that chimed softly in the wind. Under different circumstances, Rylan might have admired their beauty. Now they represented certain death. Impact came with bone-jarring force. The Meridian carved a smoking trench through the crystal grove, her hull shrieking against the mineral formations before finally coming to rest against a cluster of larger trees. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. Rylan's consciousness returned in fragments. Pain lanced through his left shoulder and something wet trickled down his forehead. The cockpit was a maze of sparking wires and shattered displays. His distress beacon blinked weakly, assuming it was even transmitting through this planet's electromagnetic interference. Struggling from the wreckage, he assessed his situation with practiced efficiency. The Meridian was beyond repair, her fusion core thankfully stable but her communication array completely destroyed. His emergency kit had survived. Basic medical supplies, 3 days of rations, water purification tablets, and a plasma cutter. Not much to survive on an uncharted world. The crystal forest stretched endlessly in all directions, each tree humming, with a subtle harmonic frequency that seemed to resonate in his bones. Nexara's dual suns cast everything in an otherworldly glow, creating rainbows that danced through the translucent canopy. According to his surveys, the planet was uninhabited, a pristine world rich in rare minerals, but devoid of intelligent life, or so the reports claimed. Rylan had barely taken a dozen steps from the crash site when he heard it, a soft footfall on crystal grass. He spun around, plasma cutter in hand, scanning the prismatic maze of trees. Nothing moved, yet he felt eyes upon him, a sensation that made his skin crawl. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing strangely among the crystal formations. "Is someone there?" Silence answered him, broken only by the harmonic whisper of the crystal trees. But as he turned to continue his exploration, a figure emerged from behind a cluster of particularly large formations. She was tall and graceful, with pale skin that seemed to hold an inner luminescence. Her hair fell in waves of deepest black, adorned with small crystals that caught the light. She wore simple garments woven from some kind of plant fiber. But what struck Rylan most were her eyes, large, expressive, and filled with wonder as they fixed upon him. "By the twin lights," she whispered in accented but understandable standard. "You're real." Rylan kept the plasma cutter lowered but ready. "You speak my language." She nodded, taking a cautious step closer. "The old learning crystals. We studied the Sky People's words, though we never believed." She shook her head in amazement. "I am Zara of the Nexari, and you are male." The way she said the word sent a chill down Rylan's spine. Not with disgust or fear, but with something approaching reverence. "Yes, I'm male, human. My name is Rylan Voss, commander of—" "You must come with me," Zara interrupted, her voice urgent. "The others must see. They must know you have come at last." Before Rylan could protest, she turned and began walking deeper into the crystal forest. Something in her tone, desperate hope mixed with barely contained excitement, compelled him to follow. As they walked, she kept glancing back at him as if afraid he might vanish like a mirage. "How long since you've seen a human?" Rylan asked, struggling to keep up with her surprisingly swift pace. Zara paused, her expression growing. troubled. Not human. Male. Any male. She resumed walking, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 3 generations have passed since the last boy child was born to our people. 3 generations of waiting, hoping, praying to the twin lights for deliverance. The implications hit Rylan like a physical blow. An entire society without males, for nearly a century. No wonder she looked at him with such intensity. They crested a ridge of crystalline outcroppings, and below them spread a sight that took Rylan's breath away. Nestled in a valley carved from living crystal was a settlement unlike anything he'd ever seen. Graceful spires twisted upward like frozen music, their surfaces alive with gentle bioluminescence. Gardens of crystal flowers bloomed in impossible colors, and streams of pure water wound between structures that seemed grown rather than built. But it was the inhabitants that truly amazed him. Women moved through the settlement with fluid grace, hundreds of them, all with the same luminous skin and dark hair as Zara. Some tended the crystal gardens, others worked at crafts he couldn't begin to identify. Children played in the streams, their laughter like silver bells in the crystal-clear air. Not one male among them. As Zara led him down into the settlement, activity gradually ceased. Women stopped their work to stare, children hid behind their mothers' robes, and whispers spread like wildfire through the community. By the time they reached the central plaza, a crowd had gathered. An elderly woman emerged from the largest spire, her hair silver with age, and her bearing regal. She wore robes of deep blue that seemed to hold captured starlight, and a circlet of crystal adorned her brow. This could only be their leader. Thara, first mother of the Nexari, Zara announced formally, I present Rylan Voss, sky-fallen and male-born, delivered to us by the twin lights' grace. Thara approached slowly, her ancient eyes studying Rylan with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. She circled him like a predator evaluating prey, though her expression held wonder rather than threat. So, she said finally, her voice carrying the weight of years, the prophecies spoke truth. In our darkest hour, when hope seemed lost, a male would fall from the sky to restore balance to our world. She reached out with a trembling hand, touching Rylan's arm as if to confirm his reality. Welcome, Sky-bearer. We have waited so very long. The crowd pressed closer, and Rylan found himself the center of dozens of staring eyes. Some held hope, others curiosity, but a few carried something that made him deeply uneasy, a hunger that went beyond the physical. I'm honored by your welcome, Rylan said carefully, but I need to repair my ship and contact my people. They'll be searching for me. Thara's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Of course, Sky-bearer, but surely you are injured and weary. Accept our hospitality while you recover your strength. It wasn't a request. 2 women stepped forward, one tall with bronze-colored hair who introduced herself as Kess the Healer, and another with fierce green eyes who gave her name as Nyx, defender of the Nexari. Together they escorted Rylan to a beautifully appointed chamber within one of the crystal spires. Rest now, Kess said gently, applying a soothing salve to his wounds. Tomorrow, we will speak of many things. As they prepared to leave, Rylan caught Nyx's arm. My ship. I need to check on it, see if anything can be salvaged. Nyx's smile was sharp as crystal. Fear not, Sky-bearer. It has been secured. For your protection, of course. The way she said it sent alarm bells ringing in Rylan's mind. He waited until he was alone, then slipped from his chamber and made his way back toward the crash site. What he found there confirmed his worst fears. The wreckage of the Meridian had been stripped clean. Every piece of salvageable technology was gone, including his emergency beacon and the plasma cutter he'd foolishly left behind. Most telling of all, the escape pod that might have carried him off-world had been methodically destroyed. Its hull opened like a flower, and its contents removed. He was stranded. As he stood among the ruins of his ship, the crystalline trees, chiming softly in the night breeze, Rylan began to understand the true nature of his situation. He wasn't a guest of the Nexari, he was their prize, their answer to generations of desperate hope. and they had no intention of letting him leave. The sound of approaching footsteps made him turn. Zara emerged from the crystal forest, her luminous skin glowing softly in the starlight. "You should not have come here alone," she said quietly. "It is not safe." "Safe from what?" Rylan demanded. "From you?" She flinched as if struck. "From despair, Skybearer. From the madness that comes when hope turns to obsession." Her eyes met his, filled with something that might have been sympathy. "You are not the first Skyfallen. We have found, though you are the first in my lifetime. The others, they did not understand what they meant to us, what you mean to us." "And what's that exactly?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible above the crystal song. "Salvation, the end of our dying, the father of our future." She looked at him then, and Rylan saw the weight of her people's expectations reflected in her luminous eyes. "In 3 days, when the twin moons rise together, there will be a choosing ceremony. The ritual is ancient, sacred. You will select one of us to bond with, and through that union our people will live again." Rylan felt the trap closing around him like a fist. "And if I refuse?" Zara's expression was answer enough. In the distance, the crystal spires of the Nexari settlement glowed like captured stars, beautiful and alien and utterly inescapable. Somewhere among them, generations of desperate women waited for a miracle that wore his face. The ceremony was in 3 days. Somehow he had to find a way to escape before then, or risk becoming a prisoner of their hope forever. The ritual of choice dawn broke with the sound of crystal chimes echoing through the settlement as Rylan paced his chamber like a caged predator. 2 days had passed since his discovery of the destroyed escape pod, and the weight of his captivity pressed down like a physical force. Outside his window, the Nexari moved with fevered purpose, preparing for the ceremony that would seal his fate. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. The door opened to reveal a woman he hadn't met before, petite and graceful, with silver-streaked hair and gentle eyes that held ancient wisdom. She carried a tray of steaming food and moved with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Vera, keeper of the sacred flames," she said, setting the tray down carefully. "We must speak, Skybearer, before the twin moons rise tonight." Rylan studied her warily. Unlike the others, Vera seemed immune to the desperate hope that infected the rest of the settlement. "Let me guess, you're here to explain why I should embrace my destiny as your people's salvation?" Vera's smile was sad but knowing. "Quite the opposite. I am here to tell you why you must not." The unexpected response caught Rylan off guard. He gestured for her to continue. 3 generations ago, Vera began, settling into a chair carved from living crystal. "Our world was not as you see it now. We were a balanced people, males and females living in harmony, our population thriving. But then came the blight." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns in the air that seemed to make the crystal walls pulse with deeper light. "It was not a disease of the body, but of the spirit. Our males began to fade. First their creativity died, then their passion, then their very life force. One by one they withered away until only dust remained. The last male child born to us died before his 5th year." Rylan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the crystal chamber's cool air. "What caused it?" "Desperation," Vera said simply. "When the first males began to fade, our people turned to the ancient technologies buried deep beneath our settlement. They tried to force balance through artificial means to create life where the natural order had been disrupted. But their interference only made things worse. The blight became self-perpetuating, a curse that feeds on our very attempts to break. And then why the ceremony? If artificial intervention caused the problem? Because my people have forgotten the true nature of the curse," Vera interrupted. "They see you as their salvation, but you are actually their test. The old prophecies speak not of a male who will restore us through breeding, but one who will break the cycle by refusing to be possessed." Before Rylan could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Vera rose swiftly, pressing something. small and warm, into his palm. "The heart of Nexara," she whispered. "Guard it well, and remember, the choice that matters is not which woman you select, but whether you choose freedom over captivity, for all of us." The door opened and Kess entered, her healer's robes rustling softly. "Forgive the interruption, Vera, but the Skybearer must prepare for the ceremony." Vera nodded gravely and departed without another word. Rylan looked down at the object in his palm, a crystal that pulsed with inner fire, warm to the touch and somehow alive. He slipped it into his pocket just as Kess approached with ceremonial garments. "These belong to the last male of our people," she said reverently, holding up robes of midnight blue shot through with threads of silver. "It is fitting that you should wear them tonight." As Kess helped him dress, Rylan noticed her hands trembling slightly. "Are you afraid?" he asked gently. Her laugh was brittle. "Terrified, we all are. What if the ceremony fails? What if you choose someone else? What if—" She stopped, her composure cracking. "I have waited 37 years for this moment, Skybearer. We all have." The weight of their collective desperation settled on Rylan's shoulders like a mantle. These weren't monsters or kidnappers. They were a dying people clinging to their last hope. It made what he had to do infinitely harder. As twilight deepened over the crystal settlement, Rylan was escorted to the central plaza where the ceremony would take place. The entire population had gathered, hundreds of women arranged in concentric circles around a raised dais carved from a single massive crystal. The structure pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to the emotional state of the crowd. Thara stood at the center, her ceremonial robes making her appear more goddess than mortal. "Welcome, daughters of Nexara, to the ceremony of choosing. Tonight, the Skybearer will select his bonded one, and through their union, our people will be reborn." A cheer rose from the assembled crowd, but Rylan noticed not everyone participated. In the outer circles, some women watched with expressions of doubt or even resignation. One in particular caught his attention, a tall woman with fierce eyes and intricate tattoos covering her arms. She stood apart from the others, her posture suggesting barely contained violence. The ceremony began with ritual presentations. One by one, women came forward to offer themselves to Rylan's consideration. They spoke of their skills, their devotion, their worthiness to bear the future of their race. Each presentation was more elaborate than the last, and with each passing moment, Rylan felt the noose of expectation tightening around his neck. Then came Lena, a quiet craftswoman who worked with crystal formations. Unlike the others, she didn't speak of herself but of him, of the fear she saw in his eyes, the loneliness of being the sole focus of so much desperate hope. Her words were simple but cut through the ceremonial pageantry like a blade. "I would not cage a bird and call it love," she said softly, her eyes meeting Rylan's. "Freedom given freely is worth more than devotion demanded." Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd, but Lena continued. "The Skybearer is not our possession to claim. He is a person with his own dreams, his own desires. Perhaps our salvation lies not in binding him to us, but in setting him free." "Blasphemy!" someone shouted from the crowd. "The prophecies are clear." "The prophecies speak in riddles," called another voice. The tattooed woman stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention. "I am Senna, hunt leader of the outer reaches. I have traveled beyond our crystal veil, and I have seen the bones of other settlements, places where our ancestors tried to force males to stay through binding and ceremony. Those places died anyway, because you cannot build life on a foundation of captivity." Chaos erupted in the plaza. Some women shouted in support of the traditional ceremony, while others rallied behind Senna's words. In the midst of the turmoil, Rylan felt the crystal in his pocket growing warm, then hot. Vera's words echoed in his memory. "The choice that matters is not which woman you select, but whether you choose freedom over captivity, for all of us." Understanding flooded through him. The heart of Nexara wasn't just a crystal. It was a key to the ancient technology buried beneath the settlement. the same technology that had caused the blight in the first place. Ryland stepped onto the central dais, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop!" The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "You want to know my choice? I choose freedom, not just for myself, but for all of you." He pulled the crystal from his pocket, holding it high so its pulsing light was visible to everyone. "This is the heart of Nexara, and it holds the power to end your suffering, but not through bondage or ceremony, through release." Thara's face went pale. "You don't understand what you're doing. That crystal is dangerous." "It's dangerous because you've been using it wrong for 3 generations, Rylan replied. "You've been trying to force life into being, to create balance through control. But the blight isn't a curse, it's a symptom. Your world is trying to heal itself, and your interference keeps tearing the wound open." He closed his eyes and let his consciousness merge with the crystal. Immediately he was overwhelmed by visions, the true history of Nexara, the original balance between its people and their crystalline world, and the moment when fear drove them to break that harmony. In pursuit of artificial solutions, the males didn't fade because of disease, Ryland said, his voice carrying new authority. They faded because the crystal matrix that sustains all life on Nexara was disrupted. Every attempt to force breeding, every ceremony designed to compel bonding, has fed that disruption. You've been poisoning yourselves with your own desperation. The heart of Nexara pulsed brighter, and throughout the settlement, the crystal structures began to resonate with harmonious frequencies. For the first time in generations, the true song of Nexara rang out. Not the desperate whisper of a dying world, but the full-throated chorus of a planet in perfect balance. "But how do we heal?" Lena asked, stepping forward with tears streaming down her luminous cheeks. Ryland smiled, feeling the weight of understanding settle into his bones. "By letting go, by choosing cooperation over domination, partnership over possession." He looked around the circle of faces, some hopeful, some terrified, all hanging on his words. "I won't choose one of you to bond with because that's not what any of us needs. Instead, I offer myself as a bridge between your world and mine, a teacher and a friend, but not a captive or a prize." Senna nodded approvingly. "And what of children? Our future?" "Will come naturally, when the time is right and the choice is free," Rylan replied. "But it will come through love, not obligation. Through partnership, not desperation." The Crystal Plaza erupted in heated debate as the implications of his words sank in. Some women clung to the old ways, insisting that the ceremony must proceed. Others embraced the possibility of a different future. But gradually, as the heart of Nexara continued to pulse with healing light, a new consensus began to emerge. Thara approached Ryland slowly, her ancient eyes reflecting the crystal's glow. "You ask us to abandon everything we have believed, everything we have hoped for. I ask you to hope for something better," Ryland replied gently. "Not salvation through subjugation, but healing through freedom. Not the return of the past, but the creation of a new future." The first mother of the Nexari studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Perhaps it is time to try a different path." As the twin moons rose over the crystal settlement, bathing everything in silver light, the ceremony of choosing became something entirely different, a ceremony of release. One by one, the women of Nexara stepped forward to pledge not their devotion to a captive male, but their commitment to building a society based on freedom and mutual respect. Ryland stayed among the Nexari for several more months, helping them understand and repair the ancient crystal matrix that sustained their world. Slowly, the blight began to recede, and the first male children in 3 generations were born, not to fulfillment of desperate prophecy, but as natural expressions of a world returning to balance. When his rescue ship finally arrived, responding to the beacon Vera had secretly been maintaining, Ryland faced his own moment of choice. The Nexari no longer demanded that he stay, but many hoped he would choose to remain. Standing in the crystal, plaza where the ceremony had been transformed, Rylan looked around at the faces of the women who had become his friends rather than his captors. "I'll return," he promised. "Not as your salvation or your prisoner, but as someone who cares about your future. And next time, I'll bring others, male and female, who might choose to make their lives here freely." Zara stepped forward, the desperate hunger in her eyes replaced by something warmer and infinitely more valuable. "Genuine affection freely given. We will be here," she said simply. "Not waiting for salvation, but building it ourselves." As Ryland's ship lifted off from the crystal world, he watched through the viewport as the settlement below pulsed with renewed life. The Nexari had learned that true salvation couldn't be captured or compelled. It could only be chosen freely and with open hearts. In the end, he had given them something far more precious than his genetic material or his captive devotion. He had given them the courage to set themselves free. The end.